On a tiny island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the United States is currently building a project so big it will change the balance of world power. This is the $800 million restoration of North Field on Tinian. Right now, engineers are clearing 2 million square meters of dense jungle to uncover a ghost from the Second World War. They are rebuilding a massive runway that is 2,621 meters long and 46 meters wide. This runway must be strong enough to hold a plane weighing 377,389 kilograms without the ground cracking. But building on a remote island made of old coral is a nightmare for engineers. How do you turn a sinking jungle into the most powerful airbase on Earth while unexploded bombs are still hidden in the dirt? To understand why this project is happening now, we have to look back 80 years to a time when this island was the most important place on the planet. In 1944, the island of Tinian was captured from Japanese forces in a very short and violent battle. As soon as the fighting stopped, the United States Navy Seabees arrived. They performed what people called a miracle of construction. In just a few months, 15,000 workers moved enough coral and dirt to fill the Hoover Dam 3 times over. They built the largest airbase in the world at that time. It had 4 parallel runways that were each over 2,600 meters long. At its peak, North Field was home to 265 Boeing B-29 Superfortress bombers. These were the most advanced planes in the world. This island was the exact spot where the planes Enola Gay and Bockscar took off to drop the atomic bombs on Japan. This ended the war, but after 1947, the military left the island. For nearly 80 years, the jungle grew over the runways. The concrete cracked and disappeared under thick vines and trees. The island became a quiet place for history fans and cows. But today, the world is changing, and the United States needs this island back. But how do you fix a base that has been rotting in the tropical sun for almost a century? The first big challenge for the modern engineers was simply finding the old runways. The jungle on Tinian is not like a park. It is a thick, tangled mess of trees and vines that had 80 years to swallow the base. Engineers from a special group called Red Horse had to clear about 200 hectares of this forest. They used massive bulldozers and saws to cut through the green wall. But this was not just a simple gardening job. Because Tinian was a major battlefield in World War II, the ground is filled with dangerous secrets. Buried in the dirt are unexploded bombs, grenades and bullets from the 1944 invasion. If a bulldozer blade hits an old Japanese projectile or a United States grenade, it could blow up and kill the workers. To stay safe, the team has to use special tools to scan the ground before they move any dirt. They have to move slowly and carefully, checking every meter for old explosives. Once the area is safe, they are left with a massive pile of wood and plants. On a small island, you cannot just throw this trash away. So, the engineers used something called air curtain incinerators. These are giant metal boxes that burn wood at extremely high temperatures. They use a literal curtain of air to trap the smoke inside, so it does not pollute the island. This turns 10 tons of wood into just 1 ton of a special black ash called biochar. This ash is then given to local farmers to help their crops grow. But once the jungle is gone, the engineers face an even bigger problem. What if the very ground they are building on is not strong enough to hold a plane? The island of Tinian is not made of regular dirt or strong granite. It is a giant piece of old coral reef that rose out of the ocean millions of years ago. Coral is very different from the ground we usually build on. It is very light and has a lot of tiny holes in it, almost like a sponge. In fact, coral rock only has 21% of the grip that regular construction sand has. This is a huge problem. Modern military jets and cargo planes are much heavier than the old planes from 80 years ago. A Boeing C-17 Globemaster can weigh over 280,000 kilograms when it is full. If you land a plane that heavy on soft coral, the runway will simply sink or crack into pieces. To fix this, the engineers have to use a process called pavement milling. Instead of just putting new asphalt on top of the old runways, they use a giant machine that acts like a blender for the ground. This machine grinds up the old World War II pavement and the coral underneath it to a depth of 305 millimeters. They take this crushed up material and mix it with 10% new asphalt and 4% Portland cement. This creates a recycled recipe that is much stronger than the original ground. It turns the soft coral into a solid, heavy-duty base. But how do you make sure a 2,600-meter-long runway is perfectly flat when you're working on a remote island? In the old days, workers used simple tools and their eyes to make sure a road was level. But at Northfield, they need to be much more accurate. If a runway has even a small bump or a dip, it can be deadly. A fast jet hitting a small puddle of water or a tiny hill on the runway could lose control and crash. To prevent this, the engineers use a system called Trimble Earthworks. This is a high-tech GPS system that talks to satellites in space. The bulldozers and graders on Tinian have special sensors on them. These sensors tell the operator exactly where the blade is, down to just a few millimeters. The machine actually knows what the finished runway is supposed to look like because the design is saved in a computer. If the blade is too high or too low, the computer helps the driver fix it instantly. This allows the teams to grade 185 hectares of land with perfect accuracy. This level of detail is necessary because of the weight these runways will carry. For example, the areas where planes park, called aprons, cannot be made of asphalt. Asphalt is a bit like thick tar. If a heavy plane sits on it for too long, it will leave dents in the ground. So, the engineers have to pour reinforced concrete that is 300 millimeters thick for the parking areas. This ensures the planes can stay there for days without the ground ever moving. But what happens when the famous Pacific storms hit the island? Tinian is in a part of the ocean where giant storms called typhoons happen very often. These storms can drop 76 millimeters of rain every single hour. That is a massive amount of water. On a normal runway, that much rain would cause a plane to slide, which is called hydroplaning. To stop this, the engineers use a clever trick. They cut tiny lines, called grooves, into the surface of the asphalt. These grooves act like little channels that move the water away from the tires of the plane. But where does all that water go? It flows into a huge system of pipes and underground basins. The engineers have to build large concrete boxes under the field to catch the rain. However, there is a very specific engineering danger here. Modern jet engines, like the ones on an F-35 fighter, are incredibly powerful. They work like giant vacuum cleaners that suck in air. If a jet taxiing over a drainage hole sucks up a loose metal cover, it will destroy the engine and could cause an explosion. To solve this, the engineers designed covers made of solid steel that are 254 millimeters thick. These covers are not just laid on top, they are bolted down with heavy-duty locking devices so that even the most powerful jet engine cannot move them. This keeps the runway dry and the engine safe. But a base is useless if it does not have fuel, and moving fuel on a small island is another massive challenge. In the past, the military had to use hundreds of trucks to move fuel from the seaport to the airfields, but trucks are slow and their heavy weight would eventually destroy the island's small roads. The new $800 million project has a much better solution. The engineers built a massive underground pipeline that runs directly from the Tinian seaport to the airport. This pipe allows fuel to flow safely under the ground, hidden from the weather and any potential threats. The seaport itself also needed a massive upgrade to handle the big tankers that bring the fuel. Engineers had to replace 1,421 meters of the harbour wall. Working in salt water is difficult because the ocean eats away at metal through rust and corrosion. To protect the new steel wall, the engineers used something called zinc anodes. These are pieces of zinc metal attached to the steel wall. In the ocean, a natural electrical reaction happens that causes metal to break down. Zinc is more active than steel, so the ocean eats the zinc instead of the wall. These pieces of zinc are called sacrificial anodes because they literally sacrifice themselves to save the harbour. It is a simple but brilliant engineering trick that makes the base last for decades. This base is being built to be a backup for the giant airbase on nearby Guam. If something happens to Guam, the United States can move its planes to Tinian in a few hours. This is a strategy called agile combat employment, which basically means not putting all your eggs in one basket. But not everyone is happy about this giant project. The total cost for all this work is about $800 million. This money is split between the Northfield restoration and another part of the airport called the Divert Airfield. The engineers expect to have at least 2 of the 4 runways ready by the year 2027. While the project brings jobs and money to the island, many of the 3,500 people living there are worried. The military now leases 2/3 of the island's land. Local farmers and ranchers are concerned they will lose the places where they raise their animals. Some people are also scared that having such a powerful airbase will make their tiny island a target if there is ever a war. There have also been complaints that the military did not translate its environmental reports into the local Chamorro language, which made it hard for people to understand the plans. Despite these concerns, the work continues every day. The United States is betting that this old World War II base is the key to keeping peace in the Pacific for the next 50 years. If you found this look at the engineering of Tinian interesting, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us bring you more stories about the world's most incredible projects. Don't forget to comment below and tell us what you think about this $800 million base. Also, turn your notifications on so you never miss a new video. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.